Hare Krishna. Thank you all for watching, whoever is watching. And today we're going to do the first verse of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. H.D.Goswami, the great H.D.Goswami, the great theologian, in his Tattva Sandarbha, written about 500 years ago or 480 years ago, which is the most important epistemological work in our tradition, meaning it gives the philosophy of knowledge, like what are valid sources of knowledge for us, and how do we evaluate different sources of knowledge, whether it's empirical knowledge or spiritual knowledge. And Jiva Goswami concludes that our most important source of valid spiritual knowledge is the Srimad-Bhagavatam. And the famous first verse of the Bhagavatam is itself practically a short course in theology. So I want to do that first verse. I'm going to tell one anecdote that Prabhupada personally told me. Prabhupada personally told me that once his guru, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, was traveling to Vrindavan. And so in Vrindavan, there were these, what Prabhupada called Babajis, who, rather than go out and actually trying to help the world and trying to spread this knowledge so that people don't suffer, they simply stay in Vrindavan, in Radha Kunda, or different places, and try to relish their own spiritual happiness. And so when these Babajis heard that the great Acharya, the great Gaudiya Vaishnava Acharya, Bhakti Siddhanta, was coming, there was much anticipation that now they would hear all of this intimate discourse on Radha Krishna and conjugal love and so on and so forth. So they expected to hear all these intimate pastimes, Rasa Lila. Bhakti Siddhanta heard that they had this anticipation just to sort of jump over basic philosophy, especially the philosophy that we should care about other people. And they just wanted to enjoy this intimate katha, this intimate Radha Krishna Leela. So when Bhakti Siddhanta arrived in Vrindavan and began his highly publicized lecture discourse for 1 month, he spoke for 1 month in Vrindavan on Srimad-Bhagavatam. And instead of jumping to the 10th canto, which talks about Rasa Leela, for the entire month, he simply spoke on the first verse of the Bhagavatam. And that was the lesson he was trying to teach them, that don't try to enjoy Krishna. Don't try to enjoy God, try to serve. And so we're going to do that first verse now, which is, as I said, it's an amazingly rich theological statement. So following, the verse begins with the famous mantra, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, which we now chant before Bhagavatam class, so I'll chant that 3 times. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So now, the first verse of the Bhagavatam, it begins, Janmadhyasya. There are actually 4 lines, and each of these long 4 lines, it's a big verse. Each of these lines is a complete statement in itself. So here's the first line. Janmadhyasya jaton bayat itaratas charateshu bhigya swarat. The first word is janma, which in Sanskrit means birth. Birth. And as in Janmashtami, the 8th lunar day celebrating Krishna's birth. So this word comes from the Sanskrit verb jan, to generate. We have it in English still as generate, as genealogy, and so on. That's all janma. So janmadi. Adi in Sanskrit means the first or the original, adi. And so in Sanskrit, when there's a very well-known group of items, you can mention simply the first or the most prominent member of that group, and then say Adi, Janmadi. It's like English, etc. So it's something like birth, etc. So the very famous group of which the first member is Janma is, of course, birth, maintenance, and death. that in this world everything arises, it exists for some time, and then it vanishes. It dies if it's a living thing, or it simply vanishes if it's an inert thing. And so Janmadi means the birth, the maintenance, and the destruction, asya, of this world. The word asya in Sanskrit, sorry for all this grammar, but hang in there. Asya in Sanskrit literally means of this. In Sanskrit, just as in English, you can say this, that, and then as they do in Spanish, it's like that one over there, something which is farther. Like in Sanskrit, it would be esto, eso, and aquello. So in Sanskrit, asya means of this. And so it means that which is closest to you. This, as opposed to that, which is farther from you. So in Sanskrit, and of course the original form of this word is idam, as in the use of Upanishad, Om Purnam Idam. So in Sanskrit, this, that which is closest to you, becomes jargon or a shorthand for this material world, the world that you can actually see in front of you, as opposed to that which is, let's say, a world beyond. So in the sophisticated Sanskrit, philosophical Sanskrit, simply the word this can mean that which is present before you, in other words, the material world. And so the first verse says, Janmadhyasya, the birth, the maintenance, and the destruction of this material world, yataha, from whom? From whom? In other words, from whom or from what does the world arise, exist for some time, and then ultimately vanish? And so what's very significant about this opening phrase, Janmadhyasya Jataha, is that it's the beginning of Vedanta Sutra. This is actually, the first Brahma Sutra or Vedanta Sutra is Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Now then, let us inquire about the Absolute. And then having declared the topic that we're going to inquire, we're going to try to understand the Absolute Truth, then the very first sutra is this, Janmadhyasya Jataha, that the Absolute Truth is the source of everything, the Absolute Truth maintains everything, and the Absolute Truth ultimately is that into which everything must come to rest at the end. And so in a sense, you could say this entire Srimad-Bhagavatam, which consists of approximately 18,000 verses, depending on how you divide the verses, is going to explain the Vedanta Sutra, Brahma Sutra. It's going to explain what is the source of everything. What is that Absolute Truth? And so the first statement here after all that is Anvayad itaratas charatesho bhigyaswarat. So Anvayad in Sanskrit means directly. I won't go into all the technical grammar so that some of you don't go crazy, but Anvayad literally means like a direct causal chain or a situation in which one thing follows directly after another. And so itaratas, itara in Sanskrit means the opposite. So itara means the opposite of whatever preceded it. So Anvayad itaratas cha means directly and indirectly. So directly and indirectly cha, and arateshu abhigya, that Absolute Truth is abhigya, conscious, aware. And gya by itself means like gyan. Gya by itself means aware or conscious, but with the prefix abhigya, it means sort of like directly aware. And so in Sanskrit, actually every syllable really is significant. So for example, this prefix abhi, which comes like abhigyana or abhigya, it has the sense of into, over, upon. And so not only knowing, but knowing deeply, having knowledge which goes deeply into something, knowledge which masters something, to go over something. And so even this little prefix abhi is very significant. So the Absolute Truth is not only conscious of everything, but is profoundly masterfully and completely conscious, arteshu, of all purposes and of all objects. The word artha in Sanskrit can mean an object. It does mean an object. But just like in English, for example, an object can mean just anything that you're aware of, an object. But also think of the word objective, like what's your object? What's your objective? It can mean a purpose. And so that's exactly the same as the Sanskrit word artha. So here in the plural, arteshu. So in all purposes, in all meanings, because it also, and also value. For example, the word artha in Sanskrit means money, because the value, like in Spanish, the bolsa de valores, the exchange of value. So artha, because after all, a purpose means that you have chosen to value something, therefore it becomes your purpose. And so the same word, artha, means purpose, it means value, it means object. And so in all those things, in all purposes, in all values, in all objects, Krishna has, or the Absolute Truth has, profound and masterful knowledge, which, of course, you can call omniscience. And then Swarat. The word Rat, of course, obviously related to the word Raja, king. And so Rat means governing. Like, for example, the Indian independence movement, the word for sovereignty was Swaraja. And so Swa means one's own. In other words, self-governing. Swaraja just means self-governance. And so here we have that same word Swarat, that the Absolute Truth is self-governing. No one else can say that. In fact, it's well known in philosophy that we live in a contingent world. And to say we live in a contingent world means a world in which everything depends on something else. For example, you exist right now within a particular physical body because of your parents and the genetic code they produced and so on. Or, for example, we live only if someone produces food. If you go to the market and there's no food because it wasn't grown or it wasn't transported, then, then we die without food. So we are dependent in so many ways for our personal safety, for our health, for our knowledge. We speak language only because we heard language from others. We exist in certain bodies because of our parents. So in innumerable ways, we are contingent beings. We are dependent beings. So Swarat means the Absolute Truth is the one being that is absolutely self-sovereign, absolutely independent and self-governing, that does not depend on anything else or anyone else for their existence. So I'll do one more line. I don't even know if I can finish this whole verse today. But just, and then the next line is Tene Brahma Hridaja Adi Kaviye Muyanti Jasurya. So Tene, for you Sanskrit grammar fans, is the past tense of the verb tan, to expand or to extend. And so Tene means the Absolute Truth extended Brahma, knowledge of the Absolute, Hrida, by the heart, to Adi Kavaye, to the Adi Kavi, the original scholar, the original wise person, who of course is Chaturmukha Brahma. The four-headed Brahma who creates the universe is considered to be Adi Kavi. It's very interesting. This is the second time the word Adi appears. And all these things, of course, we should pay attention to all this. So it's already been said in the opening line, the Bhagavatam says that the Absolute Truth is that from which or from whom the birth, etc., the birth Adi of this world comes about. And within that, here we have the Adi Kavi, the original person. Just as birth, the origin of the universe is dependent on God, so the original wise person is dependent on God. Because even the original sage, the original scholar, the original wise person does not have knowledge by himself, Brahma. He has to be taught. He has to receive knowledge from the Absolute Truth. And the knowledge comes through the heart, which is interesting. In other words, spiritual knowledge cannot be understood if your heart is not in the right place. It's not simply a mundane academic exercise. One actually has to open one's heart to God in order to understand, in order to get real knowledge. And of course, you also have to have a brain. So, Tene Brahma Hridaja Adi Kavaye Muyanti Jat Surya. And Surya, the celestial beings, are actually confused about that absolute truth. In other words, even if you are the most highly evolved, exalted, powerful, ridiculously learned being in the universe, without the mercy of God, you actually can't understand God. So Muhyanti means they are confused. They are confused, Muhyanti. Muhyanti, and so even the Suris, even the greatest celestial beings or sages, without the mercy of Krishna, are confused about the actual nature of God. And then I think I can wrap this up here. Tejo vari mridang jata vinimayo jatra trisargo mrisha. It's very interesting. An analogy is introduced here by the word yata. Yata means just as. So yata introduces an analogy or a metaphor. So yata, just as there is a vinimaya. A vinimaya means an interchange or an exchange. I'll tell you exactly what the Sanskrit dictionary says about this word. An exchange. I got it right. A reciprocity or a transmutation. Anyway, won't go into all that. So here, the idea is that just as between fire, water, and earth, very interesting, these three most basic elements, fire, water, and earth, tejo, vari, mrid. Just as there is an exchange or a mixing of, so that, for example, fire can burn wood. And so that is a vinimaya, that is an interaction or an exchange of fire and earth. Or, for example, water can put out fire. That's another exchange. Or water can moisten earth, or fire can dry water. And so these three elements, tejo, vari, mridang, they're vinimaya, they're being exchanged or interacting. And so in that same way, in that absolute truth, yatra means within that absolute truth, trisarga, which means the three gunas, triguna, that sattva, rajas, and tamas, are constantly interacting, and the result is that, and then you have the result is mrisha. Now mrisha is very interesting here because the word mrisha means illusory. So it can mean that because these three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas, are interacting in so many ways, these gunas bewilder us, and we become attracted to, or we become repulsed by material things rather than being detached from all material things and just focusing on the soul and on God. So mrisha means illusion, but according to Sanskrit grammar, trisargo mrisha can also mean amrisha. Anyway, I won't go into all these are actually the phonetic rules. In Sanskrit, when words are next to each other, the last letter of one word and then the first letter of the word that follows it, they often affect each other phonetically. That's called sandhi. Anyway, it can also mean amrisha, not illusory. So the idea here is that when these three gunas interact and sort of weave their spell on us, that they create an illusion. But ultimately, in a higher sense, it's not merely illusion because it's the power of God who is bewildering us to the extent that we try to exploit his creation. I mean, that's, in other words, the universe is booby-trapped. So that it's just like, for example, imagine if a criminal is trying to break into someone's house, and when they try to break in the window, an alarm goes off, and let's say some kind of, like the criminal gets an electric shock or something. So it's, in this world, people can put all kinds of devices that will punish those who try to steal or break, their property. And so in a sense, this universe belongs to God, Krishna, because after all, he made it and he maintains it. And so when we try to exploit nature, nature reacts against us. And that reaction against us is illusion. Nature puts us into illusion, and that illusion makes us suffer, because if you have your eyes wide open, if you really see what's going on around you, the spiritual reality, you don't suffer because you're detached from the world. But when we get involved inappropriately in the world, then we suffer. And we suffer from the illusion which is created by our attempt to exploit the world. So in that sense, Trisargo Mrishad, these three gunas, these three creations, these three gunas are illusory, but they're amrishad, they're not illusory, because ultimately it's God's energy, and we may be bewildered by it, but the technology is not an illusion. It's a real creation of God. And so it's ultimately not merely an illusion, it's a real mechanism. And then the last line is, Dhamna Swaina Sadani Rasta Kuhakang Satyang Parang Dhimahi, which is it's a great line. Okay, what does this mean? The first line is, or the first words are Dhamna Swaina, with his own abode. In other words, some people think that God has nothing better to do than just to look down from heaven and kind of judge us, or, okay, that was wrong, that was right, reward, punishment. God actually has his own life. He's not someone who's just neurotically trying to live through his children. And so therefore, the idea here is Dhamna Swanan, which means Swadama, with his own Dhamma, with his own abode, with his own supreme world. Sada, always, Nirasta Kuhakam. Kuhaka in Sanskrit means cheating or fraud, deception, trickery. And here it said, Nirasta. Nirasta can be translated as without, but really it's stronger than that. Asta means thrown, like you throw something, and nir means away or out. So all deception, all trickery, all cheating is thrown away, is cast out, is literal translation, is cast out of that supreme abode, and it's cast out. It does not exist in God. So one may think that, well, in this world, everyone overpromises and underdelivers. So, here we have all these big promises that coming from God or coming from scriptures claiming to speak God's truth. But here it said that forever, all cheating, trickery, deception, false claims are cast out. There's nothing but truth. In fact, it said, Satyang Parang. This is the supreme truth, not deception. And then the last word is Dhimahi. Dhimahi means let us meditate. And it's, of course, comes from the Gayatri Mantra, the first line of the Gayatri Mantra, which is taken from the Rig Veda, the oldest Sanskrit literature in existence, and probably the oldest book in existence. And so in the famous Gayatri Mantra, taken from the Rig Veda, the last line is Dhimahi, let us meditate on that truth. And so here it said, Satyang Parang, the supreme truth. Dhimahi, let us meditate upon that supreme truth in whom all cheating, all deception is forever cast out. And that supreme truth who exists with his own supreme world, which is available to us if we can just, stop all of our nonsense and just behave like good souls. Just be a good soul, behave yourself. And behaving like a good soul means realizing that we owe infinite gratitude to God, to Krishna, and therefore our natural position is to serve, to be an instrument. That's just the only civilized response to all that we receive from the Supreme, including our own existence. So that's the last line. Tamna Swaina Sada Nirasta Kuhakang Satyang Parang Dhimahi. And that, briefly, is the first verse of the Bhagavatam. So I'd like to thank all of you very much for listening. It's very kind of you, and I hope this class worked for you. So in the near future, we will do the second verse of the Bhagavatam, which is another blockbuster. So thank you all very much.